Hey, I wanted to talk about overcoming a spirit of heaviness. If you're watching this video, it's probably not just by happenstance, because I feel like I'm speaking to someone like you that's out there, because you have this spirit of heaviness. I know that for a long time, even up until recently, maybe even very recently, I had this spirit of heaviness that seemed to permeate my life. And I couldn't figure it out where this spirit of heaviness came from until I started looking a little bit deeper into the going ons around me and the world. As we know that this world is not really under control by God. There are so many terrible, terrible things that happen in this world to really good and great people. And this world is a battleground between the forces of good and the forces of evil. And you and I, we're stuck right in the middle of it. Now, the reason that this spirit of heaviness exists is because of a guy they call the devil or Satan or someone that's evil. And you've got to ask yourself, what is causing this spirit of heaviness? Well, I have my opinion, and it's the word deceit. You know, Satan is a great liar. He's a guy that will convince you that his thoughts are your thoughts. If you're a deceitful person, it won't matter. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. But I'm going to touch on something that I haven't shared except about 20 minutes ago with a good friend of mine. And it has to do with deceit, with lying. And if you look around at the world and at politicians and news media and banks, the whole thing is a huge, huge lie. And why is that? Because Satan is in control. See, I was born into deceit. I was born of a product of a lie. For those of you that know, I was a product of the eugenics movement. You have eugenics and you have dysgenics. Eugenics is the creation of gifted people, supposedly, through things like gene splicing, cloning, artificial insemination. Even Hitler, they had the Lebensborn movement where they mated up these highly, highly desirable species of human beings so they could create other offspring. But the problem is we have progressive and regressive genes, and the other problem is Satan's in control of the world. So what you come up with is dysgenics. Now you also have negative eugenics, which is things like abortion, 50 million babies aborted, generations of humanity gone by man and a pair of scissors, all done in inconvenience to avoid inconvenience, if that makes sense to you. Well, you see, my father was a product of the eugenics movement, like myself, except he was part of the negative eugenics movement because, like today, food prices in the 30s were expensive and there was no money. It doesn't take long to go to the grocery store to see that there's really something wrong. There's something wrong with our monetary system. There's something wrong with our political system. There's something wrong somewhere. And Satan's having a heyday. He's making everybody think that everything's okay and listen to the talking heads and everything's good. Well, it's not good at all. It is not good at all. And I used to think that things were good. I used to think that everything's fine, everything's going to work out, the power of positive thinking, and, you know, The Secret, and Joel Osteen, and, everything's wonderful. And if it's not in your life, send me some money and buy my book, and I'll show you how it's wonderful as I jet around the world in my $16 million plane. Well, back to the story. My father was sterilized by the state of Nebraska. He was put in the Nebraska Home for Feeble-Minded Youth at the age of 13 and spent the next 16 years there till the age of 29, when he was let out with one prerequisite, that he would be snipped, he would be sterilized. Now that is my social father. His name is Herb. He was a prince of a human being. 5 feet tall, dark haired, dark complected, couldn't read, was illiterate, but was just a wonderful soul. Sometimes I wonder if my son Weston is a reincarnation. And no, I don't believe in reincarnation, but they tend to mesh their personalities. Humble, loving, kind. I am blessed. I am really blessed. Well, so anyway, after my mom and dad met, of course, my dad didn't tell my mom about what had happened because he thought that she would not marry him, which she probably wouldn't, because it was the 50s. There was kids all over the place. Everybody wanted to have kids. 6 years later, my parents' house was empty. There was no children. So she went through artificial insemination using an anonymous sperm donor through a program called Eutelogenesis being done at the University of Nebraska. And a short time later, I was born. I was conceived in September of 1954 and born in June of 1955. But I was born in deceit because that doctor poisoned everyone's lives by telling them to lie and never tell the truth about what happened behind closed doors that day in 1954, where one guy was masturbating in a different room and my mother was in another room and my dad was in the waiting room, and they combined these eggs, but don't tell anybody. What a wonderful thing they were doing. Why not tell people, especially me? Well, 28 years later, in a mess in my mom and dad's life because of the spirit of deceit, I was a mess myself. I was 28 years old, 1983, and I was in a drug treatment center, and my mom was flying out to see me. My mom and dad had divorced. They had a very rocky marriage because of what I figured was deceit. And I had a pretty rocky life, blessed in some ways and rocky in the other. It would have been much better to know the truth when I was young and be encouraged to make something of myself rather than just throw him out on the street, let him be who he wanted to be at the age of 12. You see some of my other videos, I was very independent. My biological father, who was a sperm donor, I am a mirror image of him, but I didn't know that until 8 years, 1 day, and 1 week after I learned the truth in June of 1983 that my dad was not my dad, that he was sterilized for being poor. And history has a way of repeating itself. So anyway, my mom's flying out to see me. It's on my birthday. And there was a guy sitting next to her. My mom was in very much turmoil about the whole thing, where she was going and what I had been going through. And she seen this guy next to her. Never seen him before in her life. This was at the airport. She felt very comfortable with him. And my mother had never told anybody about the conception, the truth, the deceptive conception of myself. And so she's talking to the guy. Yeah, I'm going out to see my son. He's in a drug treatment center. And something came over. She asked the guy, never seen this guy before. You know, my son was created through artificial insemination. He was never told. He's 28 years old and he's in a drug treatment center. Do you think it would be beneficial for him to know the truth? And the guy looked at her and said, you need to tell him. You need to tell him the truth. And my mom sat back, looked down at the ground, deep thought, looked up, looked over, and the guy was gone. My mom told me that she thought the guy was an angel. Well, to me, the guy probably was an angel because he changed my life forever and changed my mother's life forever too. So she told me the truth, and that's a long story. But at the age of 59, several years later, my mom was living the pain of that deceit for all those years. All of those years she lived. There's my son. Well, I'll try to get through this real quick. At the age of 59, she was in deep depression. She was living the product of deceit, of lies. And it's not good. Satan loves to think that your thoughts are your thoughts when they're actually his thoughts, and he's manipulating your mind and justifying yourself, rationalizing your thoughts when they're his thoughts, and getting you to do things or having you do things that you think are your ideas. He tricks you, he traps you, he snares you. And that's what he's done to this world. So anyway, guys, I'm going to talk a lot more about spirits, demons, Satan, the heaviness that's on our country, what we can do to recover from it, because there's a lot of people out there with very, very heavy hearts, people that are struggling, that need to break these strongholds and keep them broken so they can be everything that God created them to be. But you need to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Fortunately for me, I found out the truth. Am I got to go past now with deceit, with strongholds? No. I was born in deceit. It is ingrained in my soul. And I only became aware of that recently when I had some issues of my own in my mind, situations that had came up that made me feel uncomfortable, and I questioned, where is this coming from? What can I do to get rid of it? And being a Christian, yeah, but not acting like one, made me look at things a little bit different, made me realize that, I wasn't walking and talking the same way. And it was because I've been lied to. If I'd been lied to by the guy down there, making it think that it's my thoughts, Satan can get you to do virtually anything if you let him. And you don't want to do that. So guys, thanks for watching this video. I know it's kind of a little weird video about Greg. I did videos on this on my other channel. Maybe some of you have seen them, maybe some haven't. But it's important to me. It's part of my vernacular to try to help people through times of difficulty. And I think a lot of us, if you're having difficulty in your life right now, give this video a thumbs up. And if life is just grand and you're happy and you don't believe in the devil and you don't believe in strongholds and deceit isn't a part of you, give this video a thumbs down. At least I'll know that I'm on the right track, and so will you. Adios.